This just came by the wire 4 seconds ago. This is breaking news in theory. This just came from the PGA Tour moments ago. The PGA Tour announced today that Maverick McNeely
long-form interviews will now be allowed.
And Keith Mitchell have been elected co-chairman of the 2025 Player Advisory Council by the Tour's membership. The PAC advises and consults with the PGA Tour Policy Board of Directors and Commissioner Jay Monahan on issues affecting the Tour. McNeely and Mitchell will replace Peter Malnati and Webb Simpson on January 1st of next year. And then it continues. So Andrew, I know Andrew's got a list of who's on these committees and stuff. He's going to make some adjustments. You can throw it in there, Andrew. You can make adjustments while we're talking, but it's the advisory council, but you can put that in there. That's fine. So right now, this is the current advisory council. And what I just read, if you look to the right there, the co-chairman, if you will, Peter Malnati and Webb Simpson are now going to get replaced. This just announced minutes ago by Maverick McNeely and Keith Mitchell. Now, the reason this stuff is important, Matt, and I don't want to get into the weeds, and you're going to explain it much better than me, but with everything going on between LIV and PIF and the Tour and the discussions of what may or may not be, this group of people that you're looking at and the board, Andrew, which Andrew can put in there, the PGA Tour Policy Board, these are the people that are directly involved in the decision-making about how things move forward and what is the right fit for the future of the game of golf. So this is actually incredibly relevant, Matt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's interesting to me. It's interesting because Peter Malnati, the perception is that Peter Malnati has served as a balancing voice against a board that is being essentially controlled by the players, and the players who have formed a block in terms of mentality, and mentality leads itself to negotiations, into posture. And that is that if there's going to be any type of reunion of the tours, of the players, then the people who left got paid a lot of money and want to come back and play back again the PGA Tour for a lot of money. That player block that I was telling you about, this is from reports that I've heard behind the scenes. That player block is saying, well, why should they get their cake and eat it too? Right? You've got these other players, we're superstars, and we stayed. We didn't take the big money. Now you could look at that from another side and go, well, wait a minute, didn't you guys benefit from what they did? And there'd be some grumbling and probably some gnashing of teeth before they would all have to admit, yeah, of course we benefited from it. The signature event that's going on this week is an example of benefiting from it. The smaller fields, the no cuts, the guaranteed checks are all means and methods of benefiting from it. But I believe there still is some bad blood. And that's what this is a reflection of. And so having voices like Peter Malnati and there's a constant discussion, and I've had this conversation with you guys a million times. There's this constant discussion when they talk about what they're doing and why. And they always say, we just want what's best for our now investors, sponsors, of course, and fans. And I always go to that last part, whether we're talking about it in the context of rules changes, massive changes in the structure of the rules relative to equipment that I don't feel benefits the average fan at all. In fact, it hurts you because of what the top 0.1% are doing in the game. So I don't understand that. And I always ask you a question like, who represents you, right? Who's your voice? And I still stand by that question. Who is the voice of the fans? Who should be the voice of the fans? Because none of the rest of this works without you guys. And so the sense that I have from what Peter provided there in terms of a balance was a voice that said, guys, in as much as you want to make sure that there is some form of financial equity, call it, don't forget about the fans, right? And when the ratings were getting hit significantly, particularly in 2024 as compared to prior years, there was a sensitivity towards that. and everybody seemed to be singing off the same hymn sheet saying, yeah, we got to make sure that, we do what we can to unify the game and bring the best players in the world together more than just 4 times a year, right? But now the ratings are up consistently and significantly, which was a question that I was trying to ask yesterday to Billy and Curtis of why. Why in 2025 are the ratings up? What has changed? And I don't mean that question to be flippant. I mean, we all probably could answer incredibly accurately. I was just curious what their opinion was about what was going on. So that change in the board, new people coming on when
No, you can bring me in, Andrew. Hey, Matt, we lost Matt's audio, so I'm picking it up. Look, he's still talking. We can't hear you, Matt. We can't hear you. But he was really on a roll there. He was on a huge roll, making a big statement, I think. Andrew, put that board back up that I was eating.
I'm here,
I was
Don.
in the middle of eating when he cut out. So now I'm.
I don't know how much. I don't know how much
I
you
had to
lost.
throw it.
You missed of me.
Well, we just left you on the air for like a good 30 minutes, just going. No,
Yeah,
we did. We lost you for a couple seconds there. That's all. But I know you were on quite a roll there, talking about, the impact that this might have.
What I'm
And
saying is, it's much more.
your
significant
concerns
than
about the
people
average
think.
fan, the people, if you will.
Yes, because it's much more significant than what people think. You've got 2 brand new people coming on to this position, and they're going to be up against people that have been there for a long time, people that have already consolidated power and mindset, and people that have a position of how does this take care of the best players in the world? How do we give people what they believe that the people want, which I think leaves out the window where we get to see players evolve right before our eyes. It's as if all of the superstars were born superstars right out of the womb. One of them maybe was. So it's in terms of prospects for unifying the game. I think it's detrimental currently. And detrimental could just be a further delay, but from what I'm hearing, with the mindset and the strength of personalities, and the role as a counterbalance that Peter was able to play in a lot of these discussions, I think we're seeing it right now in a lot of the message points that are coming from the inside, at least from the PGA Tour side, which is to say, relative to unification and putting a deal together with PIF, there's kind of the comments that we hear where they go, well, we don't really need them. Is that because they're flush with $1.5 billion from the Strategic Sports Group? Is it because the ratings are going up now? Is it because you've got your first men's major of the year and players who play on the PGA Tour have won and done well at the top of the leaderboard and certainly done well relative to the balance of the top 20? So in other words, is there a sense in their minds of a shifting of the power? And what does that do? Will that cause a triggering of an arms race again? Et cetera, et cetera. So I saw a quote that someone quoted Brandon Chambly saying that, I'd have to paraphrase it because I can't remember the exact quote, where he was quoted as saying essentially that the PGA Tour is starving them to a slow death. That's my words, but that was the impression I had of the quote that I was reading. And I don't know if there's merit to that or not. That's his perception. He has in his opinion, and everyone has opinions. So I'm not taking that away from. I'm just telling you that.
Matt, can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask sort of a complex question. And this is not necessarily how I feel. I'm curious what you think about this. I think, my opinion, is that the golf audience is never going to grow rapidly and get massively large. It just isn't. The amount of people, if you're speaking about the United States, that really like golf and watch golf, they interact with golf on television. They're going to watch the RBC Heritage this week. That number is between 2 and 4 million. Now that's fact. You can look at the ratings and the TV viewership over the last 3 or 4 years, even prior to LIV, that's who watches golf. That's the number. Now, obviously, you've got the Masters and the Open and the U.S. Open and the PGA and the majors. And if Rory shows up or Spieth or if Tiger's there, those numbers go way up. For those 3 or 4 or 5 events a year, that's sort of an exception. It's not a real stable number. So my question is, what is the difference between having the best players play every week, like the RBC Heritage in a signature event, quote unquote, or not having the system that the tour had in place for decades prior, where every week is a little different and the purse is what it is? Both, at least in my opinion, on both fronts, you're getting 2 to 4 million. That's what you're getting. You're never going to get 8 unless it's the Masters or the PGA or Rory's going to win or whatever. That number's not, it doesn't seem to be going up and up and up no matter what. Even though everyone wants to talk about how it is, that is what it is. So I guess my question is, all the efforts being made by the non-Peters on the board to make it top tier guys, I don't see how that's going to dramatically impact the ratings. And when it comes down to it, Matt, isn't that all this is about? Because the higher the ratings are, the more the money comes in, the better the sponsors are, the more the interest is. That's what this is all about. Am I wrong?
Well, it's definitely, you're partially correct in my mind. When you're talking about the ratings, you mentioned the Masters, and just to give it its full credit, ESPN had record ratings on Thursday and Friday. As you can see, the graphic that Andrew put up there, the 12.707 million viewership was up 33% from last year. That's CBS. And the coverage peaking at 19.543 million viewers between 7 and 7:15 was the peak height of it. Now, for golf, those are NFL type numbers, and that the only time that happens all year is the Masters. And that goes to the question that I was asking Curtis about yesterday. Is it because you can tell I'm in the city here if you can hear the sirens driving by me out in the streets, the trucks? That goes to that question of, is it because the Masters is so good and so compelling that it drives those kind of numbers? In other words, could another event get similar numbers if they had the same compelling content? Or is it because there's 9 months from the last major to the Masters and people are starved for content? The Ryder Cup, for example, gets very good ratings. That's once every 2 years. So there are the outliers where you get these numbers. What you're talking about in terms of 2 to 4 are and this is important to underscore here, you're talking about the network weekend broadcast average numbers. That's not what they get on the pre-rounds. The numbers are just not that big. So the network numbers are there. What they primarily are trying to do with this, in my view, is by having a limited field with no cut, that is an exclusive field, is to be able to go to sponsors and say, okay, XYZ sponsor, XYZ bank, or whoever it is. Yeah, because we elevated you to a signature event, of which they pay dearly to have that privilege. We now can guarantee you that you're going to have big names for the weekend because there's no cut. They're going to be there. So here's a look at signature events from 2025. So that was something that they could take back to their sponsors and say, because the sponsor is going to look at it and go, oh, if I've got a diluted field, how do you expect me to spend all this money? There's whispers and grumbling of some of those events where they're being told, well, you can't have an event on the PGA Tour that doesn't have an equivalency with a purse with other events in your class. And there's some sponsors that are pushing back on that. Another thing that impacts this overall conversation in terms of philosophy is, have you noticed when there's always that list of constituency, and it usually goes, players, however they define the investors, players, the investors, sponsors, and fans. That's usually it. Have you noticed what's tended to be missing in the game of golf right now? Anywhere, both sides, all sides. And it's charity, right? So one of the cornerstone foundations of the tour for all these years was charity. Now I believe in my heart that came from the heart, that was using the game of golf to help other souls. People that would have more of a cold, pragmatic look at it and go, yeah, but it also had an impact on tax status, right? And now that the Strategic Sports Group is there and they have this new entity that is a for tax entity, do they need the benefit of the tax exempt status as much, right? These complex questions. So I'm only mentioning that because my hope is, and on some level my belief is too, because players do so much for charity. They all do it privately and quietly too, even with their own events, etc. My hope is that the charitable component of what the game's been able to do for many years, decades now, that continues to be intact, because I think that's one of the greatest attributes of the game of golf at every level, not just at the highest tier. Because when they talk about the $4 billion a year raised for charity through the game of golf, again, it goes to my earlier comments, the vast majority of that money is raised by you guys. It's raised at your local clubs. It's your Monday or Tuesday or whatever days that you have these charitable events. That money is predominantly raised by you guys. So anyway, I didn't mean to get too deep in the weeds there with all that, Don, but that's a really interesting development.
I think it's a very, very interesting development, and I think the way you're framing the discussion is even more interesting. And that's why I was asking the question. Again, I don't understand all the layers here. I just don't. I'm just not smart enough. But it's fascinating to watch it unfold the way it's unfolding. And you're talking about maybe charity getting lost, if you will. I also think there is a little bit of the fans getting lost in this as well. I really do. And whether, again, because I don't look at the ratings being helped or hurt. Again, I think that number of 2 to 4 is what the number is. That's what it is. Now, you're showing the Masters numbers, which were astronomical, totally NFL numbers. But that was a historic, crazy Rory event. The same way Tiger in 19, Tiger in 97.
Well,
when those things happen, then the numbers are insane. That's not a representation of reality of golf. It's a moment in time.
For the Masters, though, in fairness. The Masters does the best numbers in the game, which lends itself to that question that I already asked about, is it the Masters or is it because we've been starved for majors, et cetera, all of that goes into it. But they always do incredible numbers, and they always do the biggest numbers. That's just who the Masters is, and that's what they do. So, yeah, it is definitely of interest. Before I forget to ask you here, Dom, did you do a question of the day?
I did, yeah. It's sort of around what you've been discussing for the last 10, 15 minutes. Is golf in a better place right now today than it was 4 years ago? Yes or no?
4 years ago.
Yeah, prior to all of this noise.
Yeah, I was going to say
completely prior to all the noise. Yeah, 4 years ago, basically, there was no noise about LIV, no discussion about LIV. None of this existed. It was just sort of business as usual in the golf space, professionally, the professional golf space. Is it in a better place? And I notice, by the way, Matt, that I didn't say professional golf or golf on TV or amateur golf. I just said generically, openly, golf. And right now, 82% are saying it is in a better place today than it was 4 years ago. And I think that's an interesting response.
Yeah, I'd love to know how people define that.
I mean, I think it's, and we'll get people on the show. We have a busy month coming up for our program, but when we have time and things settle, National Golf Day is coming up at the end of April. We'll get numbers coming in. Once we get into like mid-May, late May, we'll have some people on to talk about the amateur side of the game, Matt. I have no doubt that the playing of golf, the rounds of golf, amateur golf, recreational golf is probably the healthiest it's been in the history of our sport. But I think
if that's the context, I get it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm saying some people might be looking at that question that way. I mean, I did it open ended for a reason, but if we're talking about professional golf, I think there's a strong argument to be made that it's not in a better place right now than it was 4 years ago. But I think you could argue both ways. So I mean, there's a reason why I framed it that way. I think it's an interesting question, but right now the answer is a hard yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would if it's approached in that broad a spectrum, I would definitely say yes as well. I think as you said, the recreational side of the game, and coming from that side of the game as well as the equipment manufacturing side, and the two facets of my prior career, I would definitely say that it's healthier than it's been. Now everyone points to COVID as being the triggering point where people realized, hey, this is a great endeavor. It gets me outside. It gets me socializing. It's great exercise. Gets me some sunshine, some fresh air. All of those attributes are paramount and discovered and hopefully glorified in these reflection of these numbers. So yeah, that's all good. I know the facilities. I talk with a lot of friends that are operators or course owners. I think the other people around us start to roll their eyes after a while because we immediately get into those conversations. And I'm always interested in kind of talking about shop in terms of, what are you bringing in? Do you pre-order in bulk so you can get a lower rate, or do you wait and you buy the clearance stuff so it's 6 months old to a year old product, and then you can sell it at a better price than the guy down the street, but it may not be the brand spanking shiny new one. It's just a few months old by comparison, all that kind of stuff. I think it's fascinating. And to that question, I also think you need a mix. But there's so many companies, just as an aside, there's so many companies that they need to get their new products out there, and they need to do it in some cases because they're publicly traded and they need to show quarter over quarter performance. And so if you're one of the people in the industry, it's usually people that have been around for a while, where you can sit back and you can wait. And oftentimes you can buy, you don't need super extended terms. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they get that, but a lot of these companies need to post the sales right now, and then they could put it as a 180-day receivable or whatever, and these people get incredibly good deals, and that's why many of you have become very savvy shoppers, because you wait, whatever it is, whether it's clothing or whether it's a piece of equipment, a particular piece of equipment, or what have you, you wait, and there's always that, because sales in golf is just like sales in anywhere else, or the balance of the mystical, which is the 80-20 rule, where when you come out with that new product, that top 20% are going to jump in. They've got the disposable income, they've got the hope, the wherewithal. They're going to jump in at the new product. The 80% is split up amongst different categories, but a part of that is what I'm talking about, which is a very educated buyer who goes, no, I'm just going to hold off. I'm just going to wait. So yeah, I think that's interesting. I would be on board with the 82% that say the game is in a better place for all those reasons. I do wish that we saw the best players in the world together more than 4 times a year. It's harder to answer that now in the wake of the Masters, because the Masters was so darn good, and was part of that good simply because it was the rare occasion we have to see the golf world reunited, if you please. Right? How much does that play into it? And if we're destined to only have the best players on the same stage 4 times a year, if that stage provides us with the Oscar-worthy drama that we saw over the last week, you know what? If it's all or that or nothing, sign me up. At least I'll take that.